The first thing Admiral Kira Voss noticed about the hegemony fleet wasn't its size, though 3,000 vessels stretched across the void like a metallic constellation. But its pristine condition, every hull gleamed with factor-fresh perfection, every weaponry aligned with mathematical precision. These ships had never known desperation. Voss pressed her scarred palm against the viewport of the Defiant Echo, her flagship that bore more patch welds than original plating. Around her, the remnants of Earth's combined fleet hung in space like broken teeth. 217 ships, most held together by spite and electromagnetic tape. The largest military force humanity could still muster after 7 years of retreat. Admiral, Lieutenant Rue's voice cracked across the bridge. The hegemony is broadcasting on all frequencies. The holographic display shimmered, revealing Overlord Mector of the Vothresh hegemony. His elongated skull gleamed purple in the artificial light, for eyes arranged in a diamond pattern that never blinked in unison. When he spoke, his voice carried the casual arrogance of someone who had never lost. Humans of the failing empire. Mector's words dripped with amusement. Your species has proven resilient beyond our initial calculations. This amuses us. We offer final terms. Surrender your remaining colonies, submit to neural modification, and we will permit your kind to exist as productive livestock. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why the galaxy fears Vothresh patience. Voss muted the feed and turned to her staff. Commander Nix Hendricks, her tactical officer, bore the 1,000-yard stare of someone who'd watched too many worlds burn. Chief Engineer Oswald Crane's augmented arms replacements. From the Kepler station, Massacre clicked softly as he worked his console. Dr. Elena Vasquez, their chief medical officer turned combat strategist, had stopped bothering to wash the blood from under her fingernails months ago. Assessment, Voss asked. They're running deformations, Hendricks reported. Classic attrition doctrine. They'll wear us down slowly, minimal losses on their side. Textbook siege mentality. Crane's mechanical fingers paused. Sir, our ammunition reserves are at 12%. Fusion cores running at 60% efficiency. We've got maybe 3 major engagements left in us, which is exactly what they're counting on. Vasquez added, studying the tactical display. The Vothresh have fought 17 species to extinction using this exact strategy. They have time, resources, patience. They'll nibble at our edges until we bleed out. Voss nodded, unsurprised. The Vothresh had built their empire on calculated brutality, conquering through superior logistics rather than superior warriors. They would position their fleets as strategic choke points, force humanity into increasingly desperate attacks, and slowly grind them into cosmic dust. It was efficient, practical, utterly logical. They just didn't understand what they were dealing with. Open a channel to all ships, Voss ordered. Fleet-wide, 217 captains appeared on her screen, faces scarred by radiation, augmented by battlefield surgery, hardened by losses that would break most sapient minds. Captain Rex Parnell of the destroyer Banshee's whale still wore bandages. From the Proxima evacuation, Captain Zora Malik's left eye was a cybernetic replacement, her original lost holding the line at New Singapore. These weren't the pristine officers who'd started this war. These were the survivors. Ladies and gentlemen, Voss began, her voice carrying across the fleet. You've heard their offer. Neural modification, livestock status, the end of human civilization as we know it. She paused, letting the weight settle. I'm not going to lie to you. We're outgunned, outmanned, and running on fumes. By every tactical assessment, we should surrender. Silence stretched across the communication channels. But here's what the Vothresh don't understand about us, Voss continued, her voice growing harder. We're not trying to win a war of attrition. We stopped fighting to win the moment they glassed Earth. We're fighting because we have nothing left to lose. And a species with nothing left to lose doesn't play by anyone else's rules. On her screen, she saw the subtle shift in her captain's expressions, the straightening spines, the tightening jaws, the cold fire that had kept humanity fighting long past any reasonable hope. They want attrition. Let's give them attrition they'll never forget. The battle began at 03 for 7 hours with humanity's signature move, controlled insanity masquerading as tactics. Admiral Voss had arranged her fleet in what appeared to be a desperate defensive formation, a hollow sphere with the most damaged ships. On the outer rim, to Vothresh tactical computers, it looked like classic prey behavior, the weak protecting the wounded while hoping for rescue. That would never come. They were wrong on both counts. Contact, Hendricks called out as the hegemony fleet approached in perfect phalanx formation. 3 wings, advancing in synchronized waves. They're maintaining optimal firing distance, staying just outside our effective range while they close. Voss watched the tactical display with predatory patience. The Vothresh moved like a dance, each ship knowing its precise position, maintaining formation integrity even as they accelerated toward the human fleet. Beautiful, efficient, predictable. Admiral, Commander Hendricks' voice carried barely controlled tension. They're targeting our wounded ships first. The Cerberus and New Harmony are taking concentrated fire. On the display, the 2 damaged human vessels barely held together by emergency welds shuddered under Vothresh plasma bursts. Their shields flared and died. Hull breaches vented atmosphere in crystalline streams. Sir, Lieutenant Rue's voice cracked. The Cerberus is requesting permission to break formation. Captain York reports critical systems failing. Boss keyed. Her comm. Negative. Cerberus. Hold position. All ships, hold position. The Vothresh pressed their advantage, concentrating fire on what appeared to be humanity's weakest vessels. Plasma beams lanced across space in disciplined volleys, each shot precisely calculated to cause maximum damage while conserving ammunition. Textbook siege warfare. Captain Rex Parnell's voice crackled across the fleet channel. Admiral, the bastards are carving us up. My shields are at 20%. Request permission to hold position. Banshee's wail. Voss cut him off. All ships maintained defensive posture. Overlord Mector's face appeared on the communication screen, all for eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Admiral Voss, your ships are dying. This senseless resistance serves no purpose. Order your surrender, and I will allow the crews of your damaged vessels to live as servants rather than examples. Voss smiled, not the polite expression diplomats wore, but the baring of teeth that had once made us predators' apex hunters. Overlord, she replied, you're absolutely right. This is senseless. She paused, watching as more Vothresh ships moved into optimal position. Chief Crane, are our wounded ships in position? Aye, sir. All lambs are in the pen. Dr. Vasquez, medical status. All non-essential personnel evacuated from target zones. Medical teams standing by. Commander Hendricks, firing solutions locked. All ships confirm readiness. Mector's diamond-range eyes narrowed. What do you see? Overlord, Voss interrupted. There's something about human tactical doctrine you never learned. We don't have wounded ships. She leaned forward. We have bait. The Cerberus and 7 other damaged vessels suddenly shed their outer hulls like molting insects. What the Vothresh had taken for battle damage was revealed as carefully designed camouflage. Beneath the false wreckage lay humanity's newest weapons. Ships converted into massive kinetic artillery platforms, their entire internal volume dedicated to railgun systems that could accelerate projectiles to 15% of light speed. All ships. 8 converted artillery ships fired simultaneously, their tungsten core projectiles crossing the distance to the Vothresh fleet in 3.2 seconds. The hegemony's formation, so perfectly organized for siege warfare, became a liability ships, packed closely enough that each projectile punched through multiple holes. The lead Vothresh dreadnought, Eternal Supremacy, took 3 round center mass. The first shattered its forward shields, the second pulverized its command section, and the third continued through the ship's spine, emerging from the engine compartment in a shower of superheated plasma. But humanity wasn't finished. Phase 2, Voss ordered. The remaining human ships, no longer maintaining defensive positions, erupted into motion. Captain Malik's destroyer Shadow's edge rolled inverted and ducked beneath the Vothresh formation, its missile tubes firing continuously. Captain Parnell's Banshee's whale executed a brutal high G-turn that would have liquefied an unaugmented crew, bringing its particle beams to bear on wounded hegemony vessels. The Vothresh, trained in disciplined warfare, tried to reform their lines, but chaos was humanity's natural element. Engineer Crane's augmented arms flew over his console. Sir, enemy formation is breaking apart. They're trying to retreat to optimal range. Don't let them, Voss growled. The Defiant Echo accelerated toward the largest cluster of Vothresh ships, its weapon systems charging. All ships, close engagement. Make them bleed. What followed wasn't a battle, it was a demonstration of why humanity had clawed its way to the top of Earth's food chain despite being smaller, weaker, and slower than most of the planet's predators. They were mean. The Vothresh adaptation came faster than Voss had hoped. What exactly as she'd expected, 3 days after the first engagement, Overlord Mector-S fleet had reorganized into loose formations. That negated humanity's kinetic artillery advantage. Worse, reinforcements had arrived, another 1,000 ships, emerging from hyperspace with the casual precision that marked hegemony logistics. They're learning, Dr. Vasquez reported during the daily briefing aboard the Defiant Echo, adapting their formations, maintaining greater distances, using overlapping fields of fire to prevent our close-quarters rushes. Commander Hendricks nodded grimly. Yesterday's attack on their supply convoy failed completely. We lost the Razorback and Steadfast for the damaged frigates. At this rate, we're trading our lives for their spare parts. Voss studied the tactical displays showing the current positions. The human fleet, now down to 193 ships, hung in space near the Kepler Belt asteroids. The Vothresh maintained position at 3 different choke points, effectively controlling all approaches to the inner system. What's our supply situation? She asked. Chief Engineer Crane's mechanical fingers clicked against his console. Ammunition. At 6%, we've been cannibalizing weapon systems from destroyed ships. But we're running out of things to cannibalize. Food and water are rationed to emergency levels. Medical supplies. Exhausted, Vasquez replied. I'm performing surgery with improvised tools and stimulants. Half our crews are running on combat drugs and determination. It was exactly what the Vothresh wanted: humanity, consuming itself through desperation while they maintained overwhelming superiority through patient resource management. Textbook attrition warfare. The communication board chimed with an incoming transmission. Overlord Mector-S image materialized, his 4 eyes showing what might have been satisfaction in a human. Admiral Voss, your continued resistance grows tedious. Our analysts calculate you have perhaps 1 significant engagement remaining before ammunition depletion forces surrender. I offer revised terms. Immediate capitulation will result in merely 70% neural modification of your species. Continue this pointless struggle, and we will make the process comprehensive. Before Voss could respond, another voice cut across the channel. Captain Zoran Malik from the destroyer Shadow's Edge. Overlord, I have a counter-proposal for you. Malik's cybernetic eye glowed red in the display. Go fuck yourself with a plasma torch. The channel cut off. Voss smiled despite their desperate situation. Commander Hendricks, what do we know about Varesh psychology? They're risk-averse. Hendricks replied immediately. Every tactical analysis suggests they prefer overwhelming advantages and minimal casualties. They've never faced an enemy willing to accept massive losses for psychological effect, which means they've never developed doctrine for dealing with genuine desperation. Vasquez added. They calculate outcomes based on rational self-interest. They can't comprehend irrationality as a tactical choice. Crane's augmented arms paused. Over his controls. Sir, I might have an idea. It's completely insane. Violates every safety protocol we have and will probably kill us all. Go on, Voss said. The asteroid belt contains approximately 40 million objects larger than a kilometer. Most are nickel-iron composition with significant radioactive elements. If we could destabilize the orbits of several large asteroids, he called up a holographic display showing orbital mechanics calculations, create a cascade effect throughout the belt. Hendricks stared at the projection. You're talking about turning the entire Kepler belt into a debris field, moving at orbital velocities that would make this system uninhabitable for centuries. Exactly. Crane replied. The Vothresh want to conquer this system, use it as a strategic base. They won't accept a Pyrrhic victory that gives them a useless radioactive maze. Voss studied the calculations. It would require every remaining nuclear warhead in their arsenal, precisely timed detonations across 17 key asteroids, and enough mathematical precision to make the explosions appear accidental rather than strategic. How long would it take? She asked. 72 hours to position the charges, another 12 to coordinate the detonations, and our chances of survival? Statistically insignificant. Crane admitted. We'd be in the middle of the debris field when it destabilizes. But the Vothresh would face the same problem, except they have something to lose. The bridge fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. They were discussing mutual annihilation as a tactical option. There's another consideration, Vasquez said quietly. The refugee ships. There are still civilian populations scattered throughout the outer system. If we destabilize the belt, the debris could reach them within months. Voss nodded. She'd been thinking about the 43,000 civilians aboard converted freighters. and mining stations the last remnants of humanity's colonial expansion. People who still believed someone would save them signal all civilian ships. She ordered emergency hyperspace jump to the Tau Ceti system. All non-military personnel are to evacuate immediately. Voss considered lying, offering false hope or comfortable deceptions. Instead, she chose truth. Tell them we're about to do something that will either end this war or end everything. Tell them to run as far and as fast as they can, and remember that humans never surrendered. The refugee ships began their exodus within hours, converted freighters and mining vessels packed with the genetic future of the species, jumping into hyperspace with coordinates for colonies, so distant that even Vathresh logistics couldn't follow. Overlord Mector noticed the civilian evacuation and moved his fleets to intercept all ships. Voss broadcast to her remaining captains, defend the refugees, buy them time to escape, whatever the cost. What followed was 72 hours of continuous combat, as the human fleet threw itself against superior forces with the desperate fury of species survival. Captain Rex Parnell died on the second day, his destroyer Banshee's whale taking 3 Vathresh cruisers with him in a ramming attack that turned a square kilometer of space into expanding plasma. His last transmission was a string of profanity so creative that Chief Engineer Crane later claimed it should be preserved as an art form. Captain Zora Malik lasted longer, using her damaged destroyer Shadow's Edge to lead a series of hit-and-run attacks that kept an entire Vathresh battle group occupied for 6 hours. When her ship finally lost structural integrity, she ordered the crew to abandon ship, then manually overloaded the fusion reactor. The explosion took out a hegemony dreadnought and severely damaged more. By the time the civilian evacuation was complete, Admiral Voss commanded 81 ships and approximately 15,000 survivors from the original 100,000 crew members who had started this desperate campaign. The Vathresh had lost nearly 400 vessels. Their changing tactics, Commander Hendricks reported from his position at the tactical console. Blood from a head wound had dried on his temple. Medical supplies were too precious to waste on minor injuries. Mector is pulling back to extreme range. No more close engagements. On the main display, the hegemony fleet maintained position 3 million kilometers away, close enough to prevent escape, too far for effective human weapons. A siege formation designed to wait for humanity to exhaust its remaining resources. Dr. Vasquez, now serving as both medical officer and tactical advisor, studied the enemy positions. They've learned no more predictable formations, no more underestimating our willingness to die. They're going to starve us out. Chief Engineer Crane's mechanical arms worked continuously over multiple control panels. Charges are in position on all target asteroids. Detonation sequence ready. We could trigger the cascade now. Not yet, Voss replied. They're still too far away. If they retreat beyond the debris field's expansion radius, they'll just wait us out and claim the system. Later, the waiting became a form of psychological warfare. The Vathresh maintained perfect formations, their ships gleaming in the solar radiation. While the human fleet grew more desperate by the hour, food synthesizers failed, water recycling systems broke down, atmospheric processors struggled with increased CO2 levels as ships crammed survivors into spaces designed for half their current occupancy. Voss hadn't slept in 36 hours when the communication system chimed. With an incoming transmission, Overlord Mector appeared on screen. But his image was different now. The casual arrogance had been replaced by something colder, professional respect, mixed with genuine irritation. Admiral Voss, he began, your species continues to exceed behavioral parameters. Our loss ratios are suboptimal. However, time remains our ally. Your ships are failing. Your crews are dying. Surrender now, and I will permit quick neural modification rather than the extended process. Counteroffer, Voss replied. Withdraw your fleet from this system, and we'll let you live. For the first time in their interactions, Mector S4, eyes blinked in perfect synchronization of Vathresh expression of genuine surprise. You command fewer than 100 damaged vessels. Our fleet numbers in the thousands. What possible threat could you represent? Voss smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. Chief Crane, show the Overlord our recent engineering project. The display changed to show the Kepler belt, but now the massive asteroids were connected by a web of plasma conduits and fusion charges. What had appeared to be random mining operations were revealed as precisely calculated demolition preparation. You see, Overlord, we've been having a conversation about acceptable losses. You calculate that conquering this system is worth maybe a few hundred ships. We've calculated that denying it to you is worth everything. Mector's elongated skull tilted as he processed the implications. You would destroy an entire star system rather than accept defeat. That is irrational. No. Voss corrected. That's human. The Vothresh commander was silent for several seconds, an eternity in tactical terms. When he spoke again, his voice carried a new edge. You are bluffing. Even humans would not commit species suicide for a symbolic victory. Dr. Vasquez, Voss called, without taking her eyes off the screen. Current status of our civilian evacuation. All refugee ships successfully jumped to hyperspace, Vasquez reported. Estimated 43,000 civilians safe in the Tau Ceti system. Thank you, Doctor. Voss turned back to Mector. You see, Overlord, we already saved everyone we could. Save? Everyone left in this system chose to be here. We're not committing species suicide, we're committing species warfare. The transmission ended. Within an hour, the Vothresh fleet began moving closer. They're calling our bluff, Hendricks observed, closing to optimal firing range. No, Voss replied, watching the tactical display. They're doing exactly what we need them to do. They can't retreat because that would set a precedent. Other species might try the same desperate gambit. They can't ignore us because we've proven we can hurt them. So they're coming close enough to finish us quickly. Crane's mechanical fingers hovered over the detonation controls. Sir, once they enter the belt's gravity well, they won't be able to escape the debris cascade. How? Voss nodded. Signal all ships. Prepare for final engagement. All crew members to battle stations. Chief Crane armed the charges across the fleet. 15,000 humans prepared to die not for victory, not for glory, but for the simple principle that some prices were too high to pay. The Vothresh pressed forward, confident in their superior numbers and tactical doctrine. They were about to learn why humanity had never developed surrender protocols. The final battle began with mathematics at 0612 hours. The Vothresh fleet crossed into the Kepler belt's outer boundary, their formation a perfect sphere designed to maximize overlapping fields of fire while minimizing target exposure. 3,000 ships arranged in concentric layers, each vessel positioned to support the others in calculated harmony. Admiral Voss watched from the bridge of the Defiant Echo, her remaining 81 ships scattered among the asteroids like wounded predators in their den. Range to target, she asked. 12 million kilometers and closing. Hendricks replied. They're maintaining optimal siege distance close enough to prevent our escape, far enough to minimize casualties from our remaining kinetic weapons. They're learning, Dr. Vasquez observed, staying outside our effective envelope while forcing U.S. to come to them. Chief Engineer Crane's augmented arms worked across multiple consoles simultaneously. Fusion charges armed on all target asteroids. Cascade calculations complete. Once we trigger the sequence, we'll have approximately 47 minutes before the expanding debris field reaches lethal density at their current position. Voss nodded. Signal all ships. Begin harassment protocol. What followed looked like desperation, but was actually precision timing. Human ships emerged from behind asteroids in small groups, firing their remaining ammunition at the Vothresh outer formations before retreating back into cover. The attacks caused minimal damage, but forced the hegemony fleet to maintain defensive postures and respond to each probe. More importantly, it drew them deeper into the asteroid belt. The Razor Claw, commanded by Captain Ellen of Voss, the Admiral's younger sister, led the first major assault. Her light cruiser and two destroyers burst from concealment behind the massive asteroid palace, firing everything they had at a Vothresh battle group. Krog calling Echo. Elena's voice crackled over the communication system, engaging enemy formation Delta 7, taking heavy fire. On the tactical display, the Razorclaw shuddered under concentrated plasma bombardment. Her shields flared and died. Atmosphere vented from multiple hull breaches. Craw, break off and retreat to cover, Admiral Voss ordered. Negative, Echo. We're committed. Elena's voice was steady despite the explosions visible through her ship's transparent aluminum viewports. Besides, these bastards killed our cats. The Razorclaw drove straight into the center of the Vothresh formation, her remaining weapons firing continuously. When her ammunition ran out, she began ramming smaller vessels, using her ship's mass as a kinetic weapon. The destroyer Vengeance followed her lead, its hull cracking under stress as it collided with a Vothresh cruiser. Both human ships died in expanding spheres of plasma and debris, but they took 7 enemy vessels with them, and they pulled the Vothresh formation another 2 million kilometers deeper into the belt. Admiral Hendricks reported, enemy fleet is now at optimal detonation range. All target asteroids within the Cascade radius. Overlord Mector-S image appeared on the communication screen, his for eyes showing what might have been admiration. In a human, Admiral Voss, your sister died well, as did her crew. But this pointless sacrifice changes nothing. You have perhaps 20 ships remaining. We have nearly 3,000. Mathematics favors the Vothresh. You're absolutely right. About the mathematics, Voss agreed. Chief Crane, execute Cascade Protocol. Executing now, sir. The detonation wasn't visible at first, just 17 brief flashes of nuclear fire scattered across the asteroid belt. But within minutes, the gravitational effects became apparent. Massive chunks of rock and metal began shifting from there. Stable orbits, creating a chain reaction that spread through the belt like dominoes falling in slow motion. What have you done? Mector-S voice carried the first hint of genuine alarm. Simple physics. Voss replied. When you destabilize enough gravitational anchors simultaneously, everything else starts moving, and at orbital velocities, movement becomes weaponization. The Vothresh fleet suddenly found itself in the middle of an expanding debris storm. Chunks of rock the size of cities tumbled through space at 16 kilometers per second, while smaller fragments created a deadly hail that overwhelmed their defensive systems. All ships retreat to minimum safe distance, Mector ordered, but it was too late. The cascade effect had reached critical mass, and the entire Kepler belt was coming apart. Phase 2, Admiral Voss commanded. Her remaining ships, positioned at carefully calculated points throughout the expanding debris field, began their final attack. They didn't try to escape the destruction. Instead, they embraced it, using the chaos as cover for suicide runs against the trapped Vothresh vessels. Captain Morrison's heavy cruiser Last Rites emerged from behind a tumbling asteroid, firing its remaining antimatter torpedoes at point-blank range into a hegemony dreadnought. The explosion vaporized both ships and created a secondary debris cloud that disabled a dozen nearby vessels. The destroyer Fierce Retribution collided with a Vothresh carrier, its crew detonating their reactor just as the ships made contact. The resulting blast chain reacted through the carrier's fighter bays, creating a series of explosions that turned the massive vessel into expanding shrapnel. This is madness, Mector broadcast. You're destroying everything, including yourselves. Yes. The battle became a nightmare of physics and fury. Vothresh ships tried to retreat, but found their escape routes blocked by tumbling asteroids the size of mountains. Human vessels appeared from the chaos like avenging ghosts, ramming, shooting, and exploding in acts of calculated vengeance. Captain Torres' corvette Spite managed to plant a fusion charge on the hull of a Vothresh battleship before being vaporized by defensive fire. The delayed explosion cracked the alien vessel's spine, sending it tumbling into the path of a nickel-iron asteroid. The Vothresh, masters of calculated warfare, found themselves fighting an enemy that had abandoned calculation entirely. By the time the initial cascade effect stabilized, both fleets had been reduced to scattered survivors picking their way through an expanding field of radioactive debris of 3,000 Vothresh ships. Fewer than 800 remained combat effective. Of 81 human vessels, 17 still showed signs of life, but the battle wasn't over. The real horror was just beginning. In the expanding tomb of the Kepler belt, Admiral Kira Voss counted her remaining assets, 17 damaged ships, approximately 3,000 surviving crew members, and enough ammunition for one final engagement. The Vothresh had fared better numerically. 743 vessels still showed active power signatures, but their formation cohesion was shattered. Ships drifted alone or in small clusters, their crews struggling to navigate through debris fields that moved with the unpredictability of a three-dimensional avalanche. Status report, Voss ordered, her voice hoarse from breathing recycled air thick with dust and smoke. Commander Hendricks, now sporting a makeshift bandage where shrapnel had taken off part of his left ear, consulted his cracked display screen. 17 ships still responding. The Iron Will, desperate measures, broken chain. Christ, sir, we're down to corvettes and destroyers, nothing larger than a light cruiser. Chief Engineer Crane's augmented arms moved slowly, Now several servo motors have been damaged in the cascade, and he was running on backup power cells. Reactor efficiency down to 30%. Weapons systems operating on emergency power. We've got maybe 6 hours of combat capability remaining. Dr. Vasquez, her medical uniform stained with blood and lubricant from treating both human and mechanical casualties, delivered the grimmest news. We're down to 800 combat effective personnel. The rest are either dead, dying, or too injured to fight. On the tactical display, the surviving human ships look like scattered sparks in an ocean of debris. Tiny lights moving through the ruins of what had once been a stable asteroid belt. The communication system crackled with Overlord Mector-S transmission when his image appeared. The Vothresh commander looked different. His pristine uniform was torn, and one of his four eyes had been damaged, leaving a crack across the organic lens. "Admiral," he began, and for the first time his voice carried genuine respect rather than arrogance. "Your species has exceeded all tactical parameters. The cascade effect you initiated has rendered this system strategically worthless for decades. No fleet can safely navigate this debris field." Voss leaned forward. "Are you surrendering?" "Overlord." "No," Mector replied. "I am offering mutual withdrawal. Your remaining ships may depart this system. In exchange, the Vothresh hegemony will classify this region as strategically irrelevant and redirect our expansion efforts toward other sectors." It was, Voss realized, the closest thing to a victory she could hope for. Her surviving crews would live. The Vothresh would abandon their plans for this system. Humanity would have bought time with their sacrifice, but as she considered the offer, reports flooded in from her remaining ships, and what she learned changed everything. "Admiral," came Captain Sarah Kim's voice from the corvette Broken Chain. "We've got movement in the outer debris field. Large contacts, but they're not Vothresh signatures." Lieutenant Rue's fingers flew over his sensor console. "Sir, I'm detecting approximately 200 vessels approaching from the edge of the system. Configuration unknown, but they're broadcasting human identification codes." Voss felt her heart stop. "Confirm that transmission." "Confirmed, sir." "It's Admiral. It's the Colonial Reserve Fleet. Ships from the Tau Ceti, Wolf 359, and Kepler 440 to systems. They must have received our civilian evacuees and organized a response." On the long-range display, the approaching fleet resolved into recognizable configurations: converted cargo haulers, sporting improvised weapon systems, mining vessels equipped with industrial fusion cutters, even luxury liners that had been retrofitted with missile launchers. It wasn't a military fleet in any traditional sense. It was every human ship that could carry weapons and make the journey to Sol System. The lead vessel identified itself as the Inheritance, a converted colony ship under the command of Captain Helena Nash, a former Earth Navy officer who had retired to the frontier colonies decades earlier. "Admiral Voss," Nash's voice carried across the communication channels, "we received your refugees and your message about humanity never surrendering. The colonial governments voted unanimously. No one gets left behind." Voss stared at the tactical display. The colonial fleet wasn't impressive by military standards. Most were civilian vessels with improvised modifications, but there were 200 of them, crewed by volunteers who had traveled for weeks through hyperspace to reach this battlefield. Overlord Mector-S image reappeared, his damaged eye focusing on the new arrivals. "This changes nothing. Even with reinforcements, you lack the tactical advantage necessary for victory." "Maybe," Voss admitted. "But here's the thing about humans: we don't fight to win. We fight to make sure our enemies lose." She opened a channel to both the colonial fleet and her remaining ships. "All vessels, this is Admiral Voss. The Vothresh won a war of attrition. They're about to get one." Captain Nash's response came immediately. "Colonial fleet standing by for orders, Admiral. We're loaded with emergency supplies, ammunition, and approximately 50,000 volunteers. What are your instructions?" Voss looked at the tactical situation. 700 Vothresh ships trapped in an expanding debris field, facing 200 human vessels that had crossed interstellar space to join a battle they had. "All ships," she broadcast, "we're going to finish what we started. The Vothresh wanted to teach us about acceptable losses. Time to return the favor." What followed wasn't a battle, it was an education in human stubbornness delivered through kinetic weapons and recycled colonial industrial equipment. The final assault lasted 14 hours and became known in human military history as the Kepler Belt Massacre. though Vothresh records simply listed it as Tactical Anomaly 847b. Unacceptable loss ratios. Admiral Voss coordinated the attack from the bridge of the Defiant Echo, her original fleet serving as Anvil, while Captain Nash's colonial volunteers became the Hammer. The strategy was elegantly simple. Use the debris field they had trapped, the Vothresh against them. The colonial ships, unencumbered by military doctrine, fought with the improvised brutality of settlers who had carved homes from hostile worlds. Captain Rodriguez's converted freighter Second Chance used its industrial cargo manipulators to hurl chunks of asteroid at Vothresh cruisers, the luxury liner Golden Dreams. Its passenger decks now filled with missile tubes, fired salvos of mining charges that had been retrofitted with proximity sensors. Contact Bearing 27 Mark IV. Commander Hendricks called out, Vothresh battle group attempting to break through our perimeter, Inheritance and New Horizons. Intercept. Captain Nash's voice crackled across the communication channels. Don't let them reach clear space. What followed was a demonstration of why humans had never developed specialized warrior castes. Every colonist was a potential soldier. Every tool could become a weapon. Mining ships used their fusion cutters to slice through Vothresh hulls. Agricultural vessels deployed clouds of metallic chaff that confused enemy sensors. Even the medical ships contributed, using their high-powered surgical lasers to blind Vothresh targeting systems. Overlord Mector's flagship, the massive dreadnought, Hegemony's Will, attempted to rally the surviving Vothresh forces. The vessel was a masterpiece of military engineering, 3 kilometers of armor plating, and weapon systems designed to dominate conventional fleet engagements. It had never faced an enemy that fought with farming equipment and recycled industrial machinery. Captain Torres' mining vessel Deep Digger approached the dreadnought from its blind spot, using debris as cover. When Vothresh sensors finally detected the approaching ship, it was too late. Torres had already maneuvered within the minimum range of the dreadnought's main guns. This is for Earth. Torres broadcast on all frequencies, then activated his ship's mining charges. The explosion that followed wasn't nuclear, it was something far more devastating. Industrial fusion cutters, designed to slice through asteroid cores, detonated simultaneously across the dreadnought's hull. The Hegemony's Will came apart like a structure made of glass, its compartments venting atmosphere and crew into the vacuum. Overlord Mector's final transmission was brief. Impossible variables. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. The dreadnought's death marked the end of organized Vothresh resistance. Their remaining ships, scattered and leaderless, began attempting individual escapes from the debris field. All ships. Admiral Voss broadcast, pursue and destroy. No. Survivors reach hyperspace. What followed was a hunt through the wreckage of the Kepler Belt. Human ships, both military and civilian, tracked down fleeing Vothresh vessels with the methodical patience of persistent predators. Some aliens managed to hide among the larger asteroids, powering down their systems and hoping to wait out the pursuit. Dr. Vasquez, monitoring communications from the remaining Vothresh ships, provided translations of their increasingly desperate transmissions. They're calling for reinforcements, she reported, but their nearest fleet is in the Vega system 6 weeks away at best, and will be here waiting. Captain Nash replied from the Inheritance. Colonial ships are designed for long-duration missions. We can maintain position for months if necessary. The siege lasted another 8 days. One by one, the hidden Vothresh ships were discovered and destroyed. Some attempted to surrender, broadcasting offers of technological exchange or territorial concessions. The humans ignored them all. On the 9th day, Chief Engineer Crane detected the final Vothresh power signature, a scout ship, hiding in the shadow of Ceres. Should we demand their surrender? Lieutenant Rue asked. Admiral Voss considered the question, then opened a communication channel to the scout ship. Vothresh vessel, you are surrounded and outgunned. You have one opportunity to carry a message back to your hegemony. The alien response came in broken standard. We will convey your terms. No terms. Voss replied, just a message. Tell your people what happened here. Tell them that humans don't fight wars of attrition, we fight wars of extinction. Any species that threatens our civilians will face the same fate as this fleet. She paused, looking at the tactical display showing the debris field. That had once been the most powerful Vothresh battle group ever assembled, and tell them that we have colonies in 47 star systems now, each one filled with humans who have nothing left to lose. The scout ship was permitted to leave. 3 months later, The Va-Thresh hegemony formally withdrew all military forces from sectors containing human colonies. Their official statement cited unfavorable tactical parameters and resource allocation. Priorities. Unofficial reports suggested that Overlord Mector's final transmission had been broadcast to every Va-Thresh military command, along with detailed tactical analyses of the Kepler Belt engagement. The human survivors, all 2,300 of them, were evacuated to the colonial worlds. Admiral Voss retired to a small farming colony in the Tau Ceti system, where she spent her remaining years teaching agricultural engineering to settlers' children. The Kepler Belt became a monument to human stubbornness, a debris field that would remain dangerous to navigation for centuries, marking the spot where a species with nothing left to lose had taught the galaxy about acceptable casualties. Years later, when other alien civilizations encountered human expansion, they would find themselves facing a species that had proven one simple principle: there was no attrition so terrible that humans wouldn't embrace it rather than accept defeat. The galaxy learned to negotiate rather than conquer, to trade rather than subjugate, and to remember that some species were more dangerous when they were losing than when they were winning. In the end, humanity's greatest victory wasn't surviving the war of attrition. It was proving that when you have nothing left to